Hey everyone, back tuning into today's video. We're going to have a look at where the next 8-10 days in today's video. That's going to take us around the 14th of February. So I think we're in for an increasingly cold and stormy spell really through the course of next week. We're going to have several depressions thrown across the country from the weekend and into next week. There'll be deep depressions bringing heavy bouts of rain, and with projection going on more of a southerly track, we're probably going to start thinking about bringing some colder air into the north and the risk of some snowpacks parts of Scotland and northeastern England. I'll show you all the detail in a second, but before I get on with that, just to say about the ads, there's links to articles on all pages at Gazzo. Please have a browse through the widgets and click through the links if there's any articles that you're interested in. Thanks very much for doing that. I'm going to start off with the Central England temperature from Hadley. We currently stand for February, official to the 3rd, at 7.4, which is an anomaly of 3 degrees above average. I'm surprised it's that high because it's not felt that mild, but of course we're not getting the cold nights really at the moment. We're not getting frosty nights, and to get cold winter months you really need frosty nights, and we're not getting that, so the anomaly is coming out at around 3 degrees above average right now. Let's say that is provisional up to the 3rd, so it could be corrected at the end of the month, of course, but certainly a milder than average February so far, 3 days in, and that goes on with a milder than average January, but we had, of course, had the record-breaking mild February, so it certainly has been a very mild winter indeed. So these are the stratospheric temperatures over the North Pole in the top of the atmosphere. It's at 10 HPA, as far as you can go up in the stratosphere over the North Pole. This is the scenario today. So we've got these yellow colours around the edge of the pole, pretty warm air through Siberia in particular. Over top of the pole itself, it's not as cold as it has been previous winter. It has warmed up quite a bit, but it's still fairly cold there. But it looks like we're going to get a sudden stratospheric warming occurring over the weekend. So if we go through to tomorrow's temperatures, well, still the yellow colours are there on the edge of the pole, but if we go through to Saturday, you'll see the red colours are beginning to appear. That's the temperatures shooting up at the top of the atmosphere in the stratosphere over the Siberian part of the Arctic. And then as we run through beyond Saturday into Sunday, that warming intensifies and pushes further in towards the North Pole. So by the time you get through to the start of next week, this is from the 7th into the 8th of February on Monday, you can see that those red colours really are penetrating into the top of the North Pole. Now remember, this is in the top of the atmosphere, in the stratosphere at 10 HPA, as far as you can go up. What we've got to do is bring this warmth down from the stratosphere into the troposphere. Troposphere is the layer in the atmosphere where weather is taking place. If we warm the atmosphere in the troposphere, if we warm it up there, then the warmth can create a bubble of high pressure. And if that high pressure is over the Arctic, as you expect it to be, with the warming taking place over the Arctic, you expect the bubble of high pressure to be over the Arctic, then we can start to use that high pressure to push out the cold air from the North Pole into the mid-latitudes. There are several caveats with this, and I always have to explain, however, because it's not a guarantee to cold weather. One is that you never know where the blocking is going to sit, and if one place on the cold side of the blocking feature, somewhere else will be on the mild side of the blocking feature. So it's quite possible that what will actually happen from this is that we just end up very, very mild, and that has been the way we've gone through the winter. Of course. The other point is that it takes a while to penetrate the warmth down into the troposphere. It could be 3 or 4 weeks to do that, so that takes us more towards March. And you don't always actually warm the troposphere up when you get a sudden stratospheric warming. It's not always guaranteed that we'll warm the layer of the troposphere up. So we're just going to wait and see how it pans out, but it certainly is the biggest warming we've had in the stratosphere over North Pole since the start of 2013, so it is quite a significant development. Right, let's have a look at the 500 millibar height anomalies for the next 8 to 10 days. We've got the ECMWF on the top, and the GFS is on the bottom. 500 millibars, 80,000 feet, is an area in the atmosphere where high pressure and low pressure being moved around by the jet stream running above. Blue extrapolates to low pressure, and red and orange extrapolates to high pressure. So what we see for the coming week to 10 days is I've got a deep trough of low pressure sitting over and to the east of the country with an area of above average heights, a ridge, quite a weak ridge, but a ridge nonetheless across Iceland and the south of Greenland. And what this does, it sends the jet stream south. So the jet stream with the tight lines here going quite a long way south of the country, and that starts to pull colder air out of the north onto the northern side of this trough of low pressure. So as I said at the start of the video, we may have to start thinking next week a little bit about the chance of snow for Scotland and northeastern England particularly. I think down in the south it's just going to be a very, very wet week next week, to be honest. There's going to be a lot of rain coming through, but further north, upland areas of northern England, particularly across Scotland, may have to think a bit about getting some snow. That's the ECMWF, but GFS isn't as far south with the jet stream, so it's not as cold actually. The jet stream is going through something like that. It's almost to the south of us, but it's still more or less close to southern parts of England. It's the same idea though, really, with the trough of low pressure exiting to the east, allowing cooler air. I wouldn't necessarily say colder as it is with the east end, but certainly cooler air is coming southwards there, even on the GFS. So I think it's likely to be generally very unsettled next week, and temperatures probably dipping away as well, and could go cold in the north if, and it is a bit of an if, this jet stream is able to go as far south as the ECMWF is taking it. These are the GFS temperature and precipitation ensembles for the next couple of weeks. So dealing with temperatures first of all, the red line is the 30-year temperature average, and you see we're not really deviating that far from the average over the coming couple of weeks. There's no great deviation either way there. This is for the south, it will be colder up in the north, but down in the south we're sticking very, very close to that red 30-year temperature average. Perhaps more importantly for the south than the temperatures is the precipitation. So, well, for the rest of this week, not a great deal, but as we go through into the weekend and on into next week, look how many precipitation spikes we've got coming through there. A real Atlantic onslaught being signalled there over the weekend and into next week with all of these rainfall spikes coming through. It could be turning very, very wet indeed as we go through next week down in the south. Up in the north, possibly got to think, excuse me, a little bit about some wintry conditions there. The temperature anomaly for the coming week is from the 4th through to the 12th of February, showing that we're generally above average across England and Wales, closer to normal for Scotland. This is taking in the next 2 or 3 days where it is really quite mild. So in a day or two's time, these could actually look a little bit colder, especially for Scotland. The precipitation anomaly is coming out wetter than average, not just for the UK, but for most of Central, Northern and Western Europe as well. So these are the generic charts. This is for GFS, and this is for Sunday, first of all, in a very unsettled air mass on Sunday, this area of low pressure North Scotland. Another low pressure is in the central part of the Atlantic. Look at that one. As we run through another 24 hours into Monday, that is bringing a lot of very wet weather Monday next week. And you notice really tightly packed isobars on the southern flank of that low pressure could bring gales or severe gales to the far south of England, but I think it generally actually is being trended with those gales in towards France, and we just get a lot of heavy rain coming through with that area of low pressure. Needs keeping an eye on though. As we go through into Tuesday, we're between areas of low pressure, so Tuesday will be a showery, colder day. The first low is across eastern Scotland, another low is in the Atlantic, waiting in the wings. And if we look downstream, there's yet another area of low pressure just coming out of Newfoundland. So a real conveyor belt of low pressures with weather fronts strung out across the Atlantic, held in a lot of wet weather through the course of next week. So Wednesday sees that first area of low pressure coming in across the country, bringing a wet and windy day. More low pressure look working or waiting down to the south and the west downstream. What does that do as we go through into Thursday? That runs in across the country, and by Thursday we've got colder air now starting to dig down into Scotland, with milder air being pushed to the south. There's a weather front somewhere through here. I have to see where exactly that weather front is, because the northern side of it, there is colder air starting to dig in. Could be bringing some wintry weather towards Scotland in particular. As we get through to the end of next week, that low pressure clears away to the east, opens the door to northerly winds with high pressure around Iceland. And then running on into the weekend of Saturday the 13th and Sunday the 14th, the Atlantic onslaught just goes on, really. So this is the chart for Valentine's Day, day 10, Sunday the 14th of February, and it really does look a washout, that one, with a deep area of low pressure back in across the country. Again, on the northern side, which is for Scotland, there's a risk of some wintry weather coming in with that. The ECWF is colder than the GFS. We saw it on the height anomalies. So this is for Sunday. Again, wet and windy start to Sunday, and another very deep area of low pressure just here waiting to move in. That comes in on Monday, giving a very strong blow of winds and a lot of heavy rain with it as well. And so continuing to Tuesday as well. Real Atlantic onslaught through the course of next week. And then middle part of next week, we start to bring colder air down from the north. The jet stream is beginning to shift southwards now. Look, it's going on to a northwest southeast trajectory, which starts to allow the winds to go in to the north. As we get through into Thursday, we've got low pressure around the country, colder air digging into the north. So on the northern side of these areas of low pressure, there will be risk of some wintry conditions. Moving through to Friday, low pressure coming back in off the Atlantic, but it's coming into colder air, so that's bringing heavy rain across England and Wales, risk of snow potentially for Scotland, and that's quite an interesting chart as we get through to Saturday the 13th. Again, there's a weather front here, but it's further south, it's strung out and doing something a bit like that. So the colder air is digging in to there, with the milder air down to the south of that weather front. So battle lines drawn really there, with the risk of snow or rain depending on which side of the weather front you have to be on, and exactly where that weather front is. And then we end up on day 10, which is Sunday the 14th. Again, turning the winds into the north. That could bring snow showers to all eastern parts of the country, and there will be risk of night frost as well. Generally, the ECM is colder than the GFS. This one, it may be a bit over top. The GFS might be the correct solution, actually, which is just to restrict the coldest of the air to Scotland next week. But it needs watching because it's a fairly complex sort of setup. So it certainly looks like it'll be really unsettled next week. We'll be bringing in a lot of heavy rain, bit of an Atlantic onslaught. There will be a risk of strong winds as well, and as the cold air starts to dig in with the jet stream being shifted further and further south, we may start to have to think or may have to start thinking about the risk of snow, and initially for Scotland, possibly even by the weekend of the 13th, 14th February, coming a bit further south of that. So we can start going with us, yeah, it's still going to go on, I think, for the north particularly. Tomorrow we're doing JMA Friday. Have a look at the weather for the coming month. It'll be interesting to see whether there's any sign of influence from this sudden stratospheric warming as we get through to the end of February in terms of northern blocking. So I'll be looking at that tomorrow. That's all for now, and thanks for watching.